Star Wars: The Old Republic is one of my most beloved games of all time. And as a lifelong Star Wars fan, it's amazing to see a game truly take full advantage of the story and world building of the galaxy. SWTOR brings this to an unprecedented level, such that I doubt any Star Wars game in the future will just ever be able to compare to just how much love and care went into this game. Now, I love SWTOR as an RPG. I don't personally take much advantage of it as an MMO, although I do enjoy the gameplay from time to time. I think most of the player base of SWTOR would agree that the story is the main driving force behind the success of the game. You start by creating a brand new, personalized character, and then run them through a very personalized story, requiring personal input in every cutscene. And that can take several months to complete, even by a committed player. It took me about 4 months to complete all the class stories and expansion content, and that was years ago. The story has only gotten bigger since. Players are taken through this journey, and they grow to love their legacy characters and the many companions and side characters that we meet along the way. I know that I absolutely love my bounty hunter, who is my main in SWTOR, and despite it not even being a canon part of the Star Wars universe, even in Legends, he's still one of my absolute favorite Star Wars characters of all time. Now, all MMOs will eventually come to an end. If you look at a list of all the discontinued MMOs, you'll notice that it just never seems to end. SWTOR is a titan, and has held on for so long, but it's only a matter of time. Now, it still may be 10 years down the line at least, here's hoping, but one day it will be time to say goodbye to SWTOR and its story. It's hard to accept, but it's true. Now, we can only hope SWTOR is ported to a single-player experience when that may happen, else the game would be doomed to live on only in our memory. Now, I think that's likely, but what I'm most concerned about is what happens with the story. Should it be left on a cliffhanger? Left to the imagination of the player to figure out what happens next for our characters? I think partly yes. A huge part of the experience for me is creating headcanon and relationships between my characters. But I also want to see a more official canon ending for these characters. One that can resolve all the story beats once and for all, but still leave the ending open enough for us players to continue the legacy of our characters. There are a few key elements that I feel must be answered before the end of the game. 1. Who wins the war? 2. What happens to the Eternal Alliance? And 3. What happens to the Alliance commander, or the player? I have an idea for the best way to properly end the SWTOR story, and I wanted to share with people and get some feedback. Now, it's been a while since I played through anything before 7.0, so I apologize if there's any inconsistencies with what I say. Unfortunately, I can't replay the story without investing another 4 months of my life into a new tune, so my memory is all I have. Well, anyway, this intro was really long, but there's a lot of information to convey with a game with this much history. Well, without further ado, let's see how Star Wars: The Old Republic should end. Before I explain my idea for the final story expansion of SWTOR, we should first discuss where we are in the story. At the time I'm making this video, the last expansion was 7.2, Showdown on Runuk. At this point, the original 8 origin stories have been merged into one self-contained story. This makes it easier for the developers to create content for us, as they don't have to write a bunch of unique stories every time there's an update. There's plenty of debate on whether this works or not, but personally I think it was a smart move. There are a few options for our current faction right now. If you are a Jedi Knight, Jedi Consular, Smuggler, or Trooper, you are aligned with the Republic, or you can be a Republic Saboteur working for the Empire. If you are a Sith Warrior, Sith Inquisitor, Bounty Hunter, or Imperial Agent, you are aligned with the Empire, or you can be an Empire Saboteur working for the Republic. And I'm considering all of these branching story options in my final story update. I'm also going to assume that BioWare will finish out the current story at least. Darth Malgus is imprisoned on the fleet, and Hedda Cole and her Mandalorians are working with Sahar Katin, who is in possession of the weapon that Malgus took during the Elam flashpoint. My best prediction, and how I'm assuming the story will play out, so spoilers if you don't really care for speculation on this, just skip ahead like 20 seconds or something, is that Hedda Cole will be unable to get the device that Sahar brought them to work, and assume that their best bet is to get Malgus. And so she will break Malgus out of his prison, and they will team up, using the weapon to cause whatever havoc they have planned. Sahar will finally break free from the Mandalorians, possibly being betrayed by her brother, Rakan. She will join the Republic/Empire/Alliance and help them stop Pedicol and Malgus. And in the end, the Republic/Empire/Alliance will come out victorious, and Malgus and Pedicol will be defeated or killed for good. There is also a bit of a tease with Syl, and some people speculate that BioWare is planning some sort of Valen resurrection and redemption using her. So for the sake of the story, I'm just going to imagine that won't have much of an impact. Ultimately, the Eternal Alliance is still standing, whether or not you decided to completely rejoin your faction. Odessen still serves as a home away from home for the player, and we still regularly see cutscenes on the planet and inside of the command centers. The Alliance still has active subgroups working to further the interests of the Republic or the Empire. Alliance intelligence, the Force Enclave, military operations, science and research, and the underworld logistics are all still operational. While the scope of the Alliance is not fully clear, I think it's safe to say that they have enough people and resources to still be considered a separate entity from the two big factions. Okay, now that I've clarified exactly where the story is standing, at least in broad strokes, I'll walk you through my idea for the final story update. Now, I imagine this will take place in a couple story chapter updates, like how Legacy of the Sith has had 7.0, 7.1, and 7.2, with multiple long story updates in each. We start in our usual Alliance HQ meeting. We learn that the Alliance has been deploying considerable resources as of late into the war effort with the enemy faction. And while our resources are not depleting as rapidly as they once were, it is gradually breaking apart over time, as our members start going back to their respective factions. The Alliance holds a fraction of the power it once did, but it is still a formidable foe for the time being. The faction we're aligned with, the Republic or Empire, are using the Alliance to its full potential as long as they can. Ultimately, during this meeting, the Alliance will decide to keep pushing on and assisting in the war effort. Perhaps the player can make a few decisions about how they will assist. But our meeting is abruptly cut short by an urgent message, and we are summoned to meet with the Jedi or Dark Council for an assignment. We are left to wonder why this assignment had to be given in person, but we soon find out. We attend this very important meeting with the Jedi Grand Master Theran Shan, or the Sith Emperor, Vowron or Asina. We're assigned a very important task for the war effort, one that could bring this conflict to a close for good. Certainly nothing we haven't heard before, but this time it feels different. They cannot risk a transmission being intercepted, even on their most secure channels. Let's say we're going to destroy a primary shipyard or something that is the hub for the construction and repair of nearly the entire enemy faction's navy. Something grand. Saboteurs can have a special scene after this, relaying this information to the other faction so that they're prepared. So we're sent on the mission with our usual partner of late in these expansions, Tau and Arn as the Republic, or Major Anri as the Empire. This time, though, instead of it being a covert mission, we're part of a large-scale battle involving both factions and the Alliance. We are just the strike force that is sent in to do the dirty work. We go through the mission encountering a staggering resistance until we eventually complete it successfully. Or, saboteurs will refuse, claiming the lives lost doing this wouldn't be worth it. Unfortunately, our companion is critically injured during a final battle, and we're offered the choice to leave them to die, or try to save them. If we save them, we carry them on our backs to safety and get an evacuation. Usually I'm against killing off companions, but as this is the last story update, I don't see much of a problem with it. There won't be future content to explore with them in SWTOR, so giving this option at least allows players who maybe aren't a fan of the companion to get rid of them. After the mission, if the player saved the companion and has been romancing them, we get to visit them on a mid-station and lock in a romance. We'll learn they'll make a quick recovery thanks to the player's efforts. We meet back with the Jedi or Dark Council to discuss the implications of our latest victory. Or your defeat, if you're a saboteur. Saboteurs can maybe also have a secret meeting with the other faction. Everyone is hopeful that the war will end soon. My idea here is to make the enemy faction finally realize how much of a threat that the Eternal Alliance is becoming to them. Whatever can be done to throw Alliance resources at the enemy to ensure victory will be done, and it will be noticed. We'll start off with a time jump, but not by too much. Here, I think, would be a perfect place for a romance scene. And now there's a very large number of characters that can be romanced by the player. If the player is in a romance, this scene is with that character. Whether it be someone from newer expansions like Lana, Theran, or Koth, or someone from all the way from the base game, like Kira, Mako, or Nadia. This scene is with that character. The player will be on a sort of date with their SO, and will share a few heartwarming lines and a sweet conversation. The SO will express their relief that the war may be coming to an end, and they'll confess that they're tired of fighting. The player can in turn make a promise to finally settle down if the two sides ever make peace, or take a righteous stance and express their duty to the galaxy. The scene continues with the two sharing a kiss, when we'll be interrupted by a message on our emergency signal. The player comments that they aren't supposed to be contacted right now for any reason, and angrily answers the comm. We see a prominent Alliance member on the other end. I think this can be Lana, or if the player is in a romance with her, it could be Theran. If Theran is dead, perhaps someone like Beowan Ego or Teza Pardax. They're holding their side, and they're talking frantically. Return to Odessen. We're under attack. The Empire, or the Republic, the transmission is cut off. So, if you are aligned with the Republic, then this attack is by the Empire. If you are aligned with the Empire, then this attack is by the Republic. And if you're a SWTOR, then the opposite faction has finally learned of your treachery and set out to destroy Odessen, as the Alliance is too great a threat to keep around. If the player is not in a romance, then this scene can be done with Lana Beniko, although it'll probably be a lot shorter. They'll discuss their feelings on the end of the war, and if they'll personally settle down when it's done, until the transmission comes through. The player will have a mad dash to their ship, leaving for Odessen. When we get there, the battle is still ongoing, and in the space battle above the planet, we can see our allied faction is already there to assist, at least in small numbers. We'll get a transmission from either SWTOR if you're Republic, or Vauron or Asina if you're Empire, revealing that they're here on Odessen. They had a fleet nearby and came to assist. They're currently fighting back on the planet, and they give us coordinates to land. But unfortunately, our ship is shot down, and it crash lands onto the planet in the battlefield. The player and their romance, or Lana, crawl out of the ship, and we take a moment to say a final goodbye to the ship that has been with us since the very beginning. But there is no time to mourn. We will now participate in the third battle of Odessen. Only this time, the odds are much more grim than it was with the Eternal Empire. I think this will need to be a glorious mission. It will need to be long, challenging, and the stakes will be high. We can see multiple named Alliance members in the fight, and we can have optional missions to help them in their fights along the way. We may even see some of them die beyond our control. When the Alliance was fighting the Eternal Empire, we were powerful, but the Alliance is in a much more weakened state now, and isn't really a match for a full might attack by the Republic, or the Empire. We see characters like Galtz and Hylo Viz tragically killed. Dr. Ogorob can die, as well as Sana Ray. This will seem to be a losing battle. At the very least, it will be one that leaves the Alliance in a state that is completely impossible to recover from. We make our way to the coordinates sent to us earlier by our faction leader and regroup. And now together, as a group, with SWTOR or Asina or Vauron, we lead on in the fight, fighting waves of enemies and bosses until we finally reach an ultimate battle with us fighting a major player in the enemy faction. If we're Empire, then we start fighting Theran Shan, and if we're Republic, we are fighting Asina, or Vauron. Of course, we come out victorious, although the cutscene will show it is not without consequences. Our own faction leader, be it SWTOR, Asina, or Vauron, will be injured and dying, and we will notice and go to be with them in their final moments. There can even be a sad scene with Theran and SWTOR too, if he's still alive. When they're gone, we go up to the dying enemy faction leader, and we have the choice to finish them off, or spare them and imprison them. Upon seeing their leader dead or captive, the enemy faction makes a full retreat, but the Alliance is in ruins. Odessen is crumbled. Both sides have taken massive casualties, but more so on the Alliance. The player wasn't there during the original attack, so this mirrors the destruction of Tython or Korriban from the original Shadow of Revan prelude flashpoints. Of course, we'll want to take our revenge for this, and we'll have the chance. Taking place almost immediately after Part 2, we jump right back into the battlefield on Odessen. We want to strike back quickly, as the Republic has lost the leader of the Jedi, or the Sith have lost their Emperor. Saboteurs at this point have fully switched sides. There is no going back. It is decided that our faction has enough resources to attack the enemy fleet head-on. Because we have destroyed their shipyards, the enemy navy is weakened and unprepared for a counterattack. And for saboteurs, let's just say that the enemy faction made a mistake thinking they could destroy Odessen without crippling themselves. So we head out for another major battle, this one to take place at the enemy fleet. Yes, the enemy fleet of the enemy faction is the final set piece for the final mission of the story. The mission will start right away, and have us on board a large command ship. We'll see us going through hyperspace through the windows. Lana stands with us, as well as Theran, if he's alive, and we share dialogue about our feelings having lost the Alliance, as well as recounting the lives lost. If we chose not to save any of the other allies during the Battle of Odessen, they are also listed. What remains of the Alliance has joined the assault on the enemy fleets, along with our allied faction. This conversation will have a sense of finality to it, as we realize this battle could be the largest the galaxy has seen since the invasion of Zakuul. We regroup with many Alliance members, including the Mandalorians who have joined our cause, and including the likes of Koth, Ark, and Senya, if they're alive, and Kira and Scourge, as well as any companions we got through the Alliance alerts. The player gives a speech rousing the Alliance and the Empire, or Republic, choosing to either promote the battle as revenge, or ending the conflict for peace. We arrive at the fleet as the speech ends, and the battle begins. The gameplay for this mission will have us with two companions, Lana and an original class story companion. The Jedi Knight gets Kira, the Jedi Consular gets Nadia, the Smuggler gets Akavvi, the Trooper gets Jorgen, or Alara, or Yun, if they're both unavailable. The Sith Warrior can get Vette, or Quinn, or, if they're both unavailable, Pierce. The Sith Inquisitor gets Kem Val, the Bounty Hunter gets Mako, the Imperial Agent gets Kaleo, or, if she's unavailable, Vector. I originally thought Lana and Theran are the best choices, because it was them that started the Alliance alongside the player. So it's fitting that those three were the ones in the final battle to avenge it and end the war. But I think it would be good to have it end with a callback to the original origin story, and it lets me bring in more OG characters. Theran may also be dead, and I don't want to cripple those who killed him off with just one companion. And Lana is kind of the heart of the expansions, so she had to be there too. Theran can stay on the command ship, choosing to stay and help the fight outside if he's alive. So, we board the enemy fleet and assist in its destruction. We have to take down the shields. The enemy knew we were coming, and evacuated the fleet's markets of civilians, so it's full of armed troopers and machines. Just about every kind we've seen throughout the entire game. This mission will be hard, like a flashpoint, which is why we needed two companions. We help clear the fleet and disable the shields around it, and once we leave, we witness the complete destruction of the enemy fleet, and our faction, and the Alliance, cheer. Of course, the battle was hard fought, and left many casualties. After the battle, we time jump again. The player is discussing the events that led to the end of the war with either the Republic's Supreme Chancellor, or a prominent member of the Dark Council. Also present can be a number of leaders throughout the galaxy, such as the Mandalore, like Shae Vizsla if she survives BioWare's current plans. We learn that the opposite faction surrendered after the destruction of their fleet, and most of their military is too gone or too spread out, so the player gets an ultimate victory. The faction leader thanks the player for their service throughout all these years, and this is where the story will diverge slightly, in a bunch of ways. I think it's important to end the story by splitting it slightly, calling back to the origins of the player character. The Jedi Knight, or Consular, will be approached by the Jedi Council and asked to become the new Jedi Grand Master. The Smuggler will be offered a role in the office of the Supreme Chancellor, giving them a chance at political power within the Republic. The Trooper will be offered the role of Supreme Commander, a title once held by Jace Malcolm. The Sith Warrior, or Inquisitor, can demand to be made the new Sith Emperor. The bounty hunter will be approached by Shae Vizsla, assuming she's alive, and offered the role of Mandalore, as she is tired of the role and wants to pass it on. The Imperial agent will be offered the role of Minister of Intelligence, and has the potential to reform Sith intelligence however they see fit, free from the influence of the Sith. The player has the option to accept this offer, or reject them, instead choosing their own path. Unfortunately, saboteurs are not offered this. Their new faction just cannot trust them, as they've already betrayed everything they ever knew once before, so why would they be given such a powerful role? They are simply thanked and excused. Will once again be sent to Odessen, where we will see the fires and the horrors of the battlefield have gone cold. We'll get a series of scenes with Alliance members, saying goodbyes or well wishes, and seeing them off to do other things. We see a memorial has been erected for those we lost. The vibe of this scene, though, is that we're finally at peace, and we achieved victory. It's over. With an official end to the war, and Odessen crumbled in its wake, it seems the decision was made to end the Eternal Alliance. The last Alliance member to approach us is our romance, where we get one final scene with them. If the player accepted the previous offer of their promotion, then we can say we'll continue our service, or express uncertainty. But if we reject the promotion, we also have the option to settle down and leave our past behind us, in search of a more peaceful life with our spouse. If there is no romance, then the last one to approach is Lana, who will thank the player again, and they'll continue the discussion about settling down after the first mission. We can then say we'll settle down, continue our service, or express uncertainty. And the final scene in the SWTOR story will end with the player staring into a sunset on Odessen, perhaps with their romance in their arms, or perhaps alone, mirroring the ending of so many Star Wars movies. So, there's a few things to note. First, the MMO gameplay will have to revert to before the final 3 parts, due to these drastic events in the story, but the ending should be replayable, so that players can change their ending or see alternate choices. This video is mainly focused on giving a conclusion to the story. Second, the story remains open-ended, despite it having a proper conclusion for most characters, including the player. This leaves the door open for headcanon if we aren't ready to accept the end. The third thing I should mention is loose ends, and I think I covered any loose ends in the story that wouldn't have already been covered by BioWare. So to end the story of SWTOR, I wanted to do 3 things. I wanted to explain how the Alliance ends, explain how the war between the Empire and the Republic ends, and I wanted to explain what happens to the player character. And I believe I managed to do that here in a satisfying way. Okay, fourth, even in the Legends continuity, which SWTOR is in, the Republic is ultimately back a few hundred years prior to the Phantom Menace. That doesn't mean that the victory of the Empire, if your character is Imperial, isn't canon. The Republic can still have a comeback eventually. Remember, there's still like 3,000 years of the timeline between this and the events of the movies, so the Empire can win, and it still works. If the Republic wins, then perhaps it makes more sense, but it works both ways. Fifth, I doubt the Empire would just offer Sith players to become the Emperor, so I had them demand the position. I think there wouldn't be much opposition for them for the title. Sixth, I wasn't really sure what promotion to give the smuggler characters in the end. I ended up choosing a role in the office of the Supreme Chancellor, but I don't suspect many smugglers would take that, so if anyone has any other ideas, I'm all ears in the comments. And seventh, SWTOR as an MMO doesn't actually have to end with this story update. I think after the final story, it's possible BioWare continues to allow the game to run for a while, but gives up on adding any meaningful new story content. It's clear that already the cost of creating new expansions is great, and I think that eventually they may run out of the budget to do even that. But it's possible just letting the server run and allowing new people to come in and experiencing the full complete story will be fine and manageable for them. And with that, what do you think? Would this be a satisfying conclusion to the story of SWTOR? Or would you want something else entirely? Would you kill off less characters? Or maybe kill off more? Should the Alliance be allowed to continue even after the events of SWTOR? Should the war between the Empire and the Republic come to an end at all? Please leave a comment down below if you have any theories or ideas about the future of the story. I love this game so much, and I think it's so much fun to write about. I've never really written fan fiction before this, so this was an interesting experience. I had a lot of fun making this video, and I put a lot of effort into it, so if you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below. I couldn't find anybody else talking about this topic anywhere online, so maybe I'm the only one who's interested in it, but I think it's really compelling to discuss an actual end to SWTOR. Anyway, thanks for watching, and let me know if you agree that this is how SWTOR should end. See ya.